Just starting with Dave, signing for Stoke for a record £5.5 million in 2008 from Reading. How did you sort of deal with the pressure which a price tag like that brings?
It wasn't necessarily the price tag that I found difficult. It was just the whole change. I think because I'd been at one club for so long. I've been at Reading for 5 years and had had a lot of success there. Moving to a new club and starting again, as it were. Stoke were new to the Premier League at the time. In hindsight, it was a bit of a mistake because I'd already done that with Reading, and I think that if I'd have moved, I should have moved on perhaps to an established club. That would have been, a step up. Stoke obviously were coming up, they were new to the league, and it was the same situation as I'd been in, and I thought once I got in the door, I've kind of sold it to myself along the lines of, I like playing for the underdog, and I like when everything's against me, so in that respect it was all fine, I had no problems with that. But as I kind of got into it, I just thought it was the same things coming up again that I'd experienced with Reading, and I thought I've done all this, and I think I've made a bit of a mistake, and after that, I think I just told myself every day that it was I'd made the wrong decision, and perhaps maybe if I'd have got some help and spoken to somebody there, a psychologist who I could have told that to, they could have helped me, but I never did. That was another mistake. I regret that because that avenue was available to me, and I just never, for whatever reason, I just never spoke to him.
Do you think the expectations was too high from your time at Reading, where you really set the bar for yourself that you couldn't really join Stoke for 5.5 and not maybe get 10 goals or 15 goals that season, that you were that good a player that you had to really hit the ground running?
I think that perhaps all of that Reading team felt that. I think there was towards the end there was a definite feeling that we'd done enough to secure a position in the Premier League each. Nicky Shorey had got into the England team, Steve Sidwell had gone to Chelsea. Well, we had great players, tremendous players, but they functioned best as a team. And of course, it's a bit of a Lord of the Flies mentality that you start to look around and you start to think, well, maybe I could do that and maybe I could do this, when really we operated at our very best as a team, as a formidable team, and as that belief started to crumble, and my head certainly got turned, I think, I can only speak for myself here, I think I started to do things I wouldn't normally have done. I started to look around and think, well, what else, I'm 27, 28, whatever I was, I should look on and try and progress my career, and really I should have just stayed where I was.
How did Tony Pulis help you settle when you first joined the club?
Tony was great. He was, the moment I got there, we had a long chat. He was saying all the right things, and he really is, perhaps more than any manager I've ever met, he could really get a team up for a game, and so I'd never had any problems with motivation, not at all, and I think it's obvious I found the style difficult. I found the style of football difficult to adapt to, but that was only because I didn't think that I was too good for it or anything like that. I just felt that I'd been ingrained in something for so long that I couldn't adapt. My adaptability was very poor, and it's my own fault. Certainly, Tony was fantastic. He tried everything to help me. He really did, and it just wasn't to be, unfortunately.
You mentioned that you possibly needed a psychologist there at the club to talk to when you first moved there. Did Stoke actually put anything else on?
No, we had one. We had one, and a lot of the lads used him, and found him to be very, very useful. And he was. I spoke to him once, but it was more. It was just in passing. Very nice guy. But I come from a background where if you have to get help mentally, then you're weak. That's my background, and that's a fault, because there isn't anything weak about that. I've come to realise. Unfortunately, I've come to realise that 2, 3, 4 years too late.
How different was that sort of adjusting to the lifestyle from moving to Reading to Stoke, where it's very much a countryside? And
yeah, I never
sort of outside of football and actually having to make certain changes to maybe your lifestyle.
The biggest problem we had was my wife. We just had a baby. It was 2 months old, and I really had no right to take my wife away from her support network. Her family, I moved her to the middle of nowhere. She didn't know anyone. There was nothing to do, and that was another mistake. That very nearly cost me my career, and it nearly cost me my family. And again, just another mistake. It's very difficult to function as a player and try and. It doesn't matter where you're going. It doesn't matter if you're going to Old Trafford, Anfield. It's very, very difficult to function properly and be focused on the games as you should be if you've got these things going on in the back of your head. Certainly, that one was a major factor in it not turning out as I would have liked.
Do you think someone like Vince's company would have actually helped you make the right choice when it came to switching clubs, maybe look somewhere closer to home, or maybe make a bit of a better choice in actually supporting your family rather than moving them across?
Yeah, I think so, definitely, in fact, because for me, none of my family's from that area, from the north. All of our family is in London. Or Hertfordshire. We don't know anyone up there. We don't even have any acquaintances up there. I'd never played up there before. My wife is from the south, and I just naively thought, well, I've got to move to somewhere that's close to the training ground, which is what I've always tried to do. But all the clubs I've been to, and it's always worked out really well. Unfortunately, closest thing to the training ground was a village where there was nothing really, a very pretty village, but there was nothing for us to do. Certainly having a newborn baby, there was nothing for us to do. And in hindsight, I should have it would have been easier to move to perhaps Manchester or Hale, areas I came to know as I met the players. I should have done that. It would have made it a lot easier. But I just didn't know. I had no knowledge of it whatsoever. So talking to somebody about that would have been a major help.
And no goals in, I think it was your open 18 games at Stoke. What did you put that down to? Was that about the system?
Factories? No. Just all of these contributing factors. I can't defend myself. I was brought in for a lot of money in school girls, and I didn't do that.
Could you sense any resentment or anger from your teammates, or even from your manager or the board? Or
no, never. No, not at all. Not at all. They came to realise the situation that I was in, and there weren't it wasn't sympathy, because all these, they're all in there, giving their all for the common good, and I think it's being a striker. It's you could have the best game. You could play. You could do everything technically flawless. You could win the game 3-0. If you don't score, you're always going to be judged on that. And I didn't do that. And certainly as that went on, there wasn't a sense of resentment from the players or anything like that. They were always great with me, but I always became very conscious that I was letting people down. And as that went on, that really started to play on my mind, and it got worse and worse and worse.
So your confidence was more or less shot quite early in.
I don't think it's ever really recovered, to be honest. To this day, which probably explains how things have gone here. I made a bad mistake, and I don't blame anybody else. And I said that at the start when I went back on loan to Reading, and I said quite clearly it's my fault, and it is. I put my hands up. I never blame anybody else. But there were things that I could have done myself that would have helped.
How do you deal with that, about signing from a football club to obviously a bigger club for a record transfer fee, then returning there within more or less a matter of months on loan? Is that more or less one step forward, two back?
Do you know, I was very happy to be going back, but at the same time, it's amazing how much had changed in a short space of time. Steve Coppell said to me when I came back, he said, don't expect a hero's welcome. So it's not going to be like that at all. He said, you're going to walk in, you know, tail between your legs, and that's just the way it's going to be, and that's how the media are going to treat you, and you'll just have to get over that. And I did, but at the time when I came back, Reading had hit a real lull. I couldn't string wins together, and ultimately we fell out of the top two and then lost in the playoffs. And yeah, but it was a sad way to go out, to be honest.
You talked about your life both on and off the pitch, maybe taking a bit of a dip at home and at football, but do you think you're ever close to depression, or was you always mentally strong enough, do you think, to be able to cope with it all?
Well, I'm always the sort of person that just bottles everything up and then deals with it at the last possible moment, you know, just when it almost can't get any worse. But you know, I sit here now and I kick myself for how it went at Stoke, because as I say, I've only myself to blame. But you know, I think if it's the only mistake I ever make in my life, then I won't have done too badly. What
did you do at Stoke during the daytime, where you only train for a couple of hours and you've got basically the whole day to fill, and you're in the middle of nowhere? As you said, you've only got really your wife as company and maybe some of your teammates. So how did you fill your time? Because a lot of players do fall into that trap of maybe suffering from an addiction.
Yeah.
Did you ever manage to?
I just read. Honestly, I literally read from the moment I got home to the moment we went to bed, in just opposite ends of the house. You know, it was terrible. I used to occasionally stroll into town and have a coffee. You know, how much coffee can you drink in a day? It's honestly, I wish I could glam it up for you, but that was just the reality of it.
How have you adjusted, do you think, to life at Pompey? Has it been a lot more easier moving back down south, and you've obviously got a lot more connections here from what you can pick him back up from Reading? Has that been easier than being at Stoke?
Yeah, well, to be honest, it has. Yeah, I mean, to be back down here for my wife, certainly. She's back amongst her friends, her family. We've now got a new addition to our family, and when I look again at, and you know, this, we just had a little boy, and now obviously I can see it all played out again, and I think, God, why on earth, or how did I ever think to take her away from all of that? So coming back here is, or back down south rather, is great for her, and you know, if she's happy, I'm generally happy.
I think I read a couple of quotes from the post-match at Bristol City about Michael said maybe you wasn't psychologically ready to play that game because some boos you picked up in the previous game. It must really hurt to get booed by your own fans.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but again, you know, I can't. I don't. There's no one to blame. You know, it's me. I'm not. If I knew what the answer was, you know, I know so many footballers in the same boat. If I knew what the answer was, I would. You know, I'd bottle it and make a fortune. It is unfortunate. You're always going to get a couple of people, a few people who feel the need to boo. I think it's got to the point now, speaking to the manager, where if somebody makes a mistake, there's a couple of groans. If I do 10 things flawlessly and then make one mistake, there's boos, and that annoys me, because I think people, and this I think is what the manager senses, people almost can't wait to boo, which is unfortunate, and you can't have that in the team. It's an untenable situation. You can't have that. I mean, we're scrapping for our lives, and even to bring me off the bench and put me in the team, if all you're going to get is moans and groans, then it deflates the side, and you don't get the reaction you're looking for.
Will it get to the point where you may leave the club for a purely non-football related sort of reason?
Well, obviously our situation is unique in itself because of the financial difficulties we're having, and obviously it's different. You know, we've lost players. Like captain's gone to Cardiff, and Stephen Henderson's gone to West Ham, and all the vultures are circling. But my situation is always cut in half, because I, obviously from what's gone on before, I won't travel too far away from my wife's family. So it has to be the right club for me. But never say never. But things